Welcome to Navy Exclusive, where today we reveal how a swarm of cheap ghosts is bleeding Russia's multi-million-dollar shield dry, forcing the Kremlin into a fatal military dilemma. It is 3:14 a.m. in the Gulf of Finland, 775 miles from the Ukrainian border. The radar dish on a Russian Pantsir-S1 air defense system spins at full speed, locking onto a target moving at 90 miles per hour. The twin 30mm cannons fire, lighting up the night as they obliterate a cheap plywood drone. But the radar screen does not clear. Instead, it populates with 2 more targets, then 6, then 12. The Russian system, designed to kill high-tech jets, is being completely swamped by machines made of wood and lawnmower engines. The first drone was just the bait, and the ones arriving now are the hunters. Behind this air defense line sits the Ust-Luga oil terminal, the very lungs of the Russian export market. The journey begins in the tall grass of the Sumy region, where a catapult rail releases a drone with a dull thud. The target is St. Petersburg, 775 miles to the north. The drone stays incredibly low, flying at just 50 feet. It flies beneath the radar floor, which is the invisible line where a radar beam can no longer see due to trees, hills, and buildings. The drone passes right within range of the advanced S-400 Triumph system. This system's radar can track 300 targets at once and guide missiles to hit objects moving at 5 times the speed of sound. But right now, this multi-million-dollar system is completely failing. As the drone crosses into the Leningrad Oblast, it is now deep inside the crown jewel of the Russian state. This region is supposed to be an impenetrable fortress. But the drone continues its steady 90-mile-per-hour crawl toward the coast. The outskirts of St. Petersburg are finally reached at 3:20 a.m. Suddenly, the Russian defense wakes up, but the drone is no longer alone. A dozen other decoy drones have joined the flight path from different angles. Some are just balloons with metal foil attached to look bigger on radar. Others are cheap, empty shells meant to do nothing but get shot down. The Russian command center does not know which drone carries the 100-pound explosive warhead, and which one is just a piece of plywood. They authorize a full-scale engagement using the 48N6 interceptor missiles. A massive 30-foot tube on the back of an S-400 launcher tilts toward the sky. The 48N6 missile is thrown 60 feet into the air by a gas piston before its rocket motor ignites. Then a pillar of white fire erupts as the motor kicks in. The missile accelerates to 600 miles per hour in seconds, slamming into the first decoy drone. The drone is pulverized instantly. But here is the catch. The Russian crew just used a $2 million missile to destroy a $20,000 drone. Ukraine is intentionally bleeding the magazine. By sending a swarm of cheap drones, they force the Russians to empty their multi-million-dollar shield on absolute trash. The launchers are firing as fast as the computers can calculate the intercepts. Fireballs light up the clouds every few seconds. But for every team to appear on the horizon, the Russian defense is winning every individual fight, but they are losing the war of numbers. They are running out of arrows. And the crown jewel is still miles away. The drones are now within 20 miles of the Ust-Luga terminal, entering the inner sanctum of the Russian defense. To protect this critical area, the military activates the Krasukha 4 electronic warfare system. This is a system that fires pure energy, and the goal is simple: total blindness. The Krasukha 4 targets the GPS satellites that drones use to find their way. It screams so loudly on those frequencies that the drone's receiver can no longer hear the faint whisper of the satellites from space. In an instant, the drone's digital map goes completely blank. To any normal machine, this would be a death sentence. But here is where it gets interesting. The drones approaching St. Petersburg are equipped with a backup system called inertial navigation. Inside the drones, tiny brain, specialized sensors measure every single tilt and every turn. The moment the GPS signal dies, the drone simply starts counting its own movements from the last known point. It is like a person walking through a pitch-black room who knows exactly how many steps it takes to reach the door. As the electronic noise fills the air, it creates a new, unexpected danger for the defenders. The Russian S-300 and S-400 missiles rely heavily on radar to find their targets. But the Krasukha 4 is so incredibly powerful that it begins to bleed into the frequencies used by the Russian radar stations themselves. The Russian computers start to glitch. A Pantsir-S1 battery on the terminal's perimeter senses a target and fires a 9M335 missile. But because the air is thick with electronic interference, the missile's seeker head gets completely confused. Instead of hitting a drone, the missile locks onto a reflection of its own radar beam. It loops back in a terrifying arc and slams directly into a Russian communication tower 2 miles away. The tower collapses in a massive shower of sparks. The invisible shield is now actively blinding its own defenders, and the drones are now only 10 miles out. One drone is clipped by a piece of shrapnel from a stray Russian interceptor, but it does not fall. The flight control software compensates, tilting the opposite wing to keep the nose level. It is a wounded animal, but it is still moving toward the prize. The Krasika 4 pumps even more power into the air, trying to fry the circuits of the incoming swarm. But Ukrainian engineers have shielded the drone's wires with copper mesh. A simple trick from the Cold War. The disruptive energy just slides right off. The drones are now so close they can see the lights of the terminal's loading docks. The Ust-Luga oil terminal is filled with gas fractionating columns, which are massive. 150-foot tall towers that take raw gas and turn it into fuel. If one of these columns is breached, the immense pressure inside will cause a catastrophic explosion. The first drone, the one with the shredded wing, reaches the perimeter fence. It is looking for a specific valve. The Pantsir-S1 guns on the roof of the terminal open fire, their shells chewing up the concrete of the pier, but the drone is flying too low. It slams into the base. A pound-shaped charge on the drone's nose ignites, creating a jet of molten copper that punches through 3 inches of reinforced steel like wet paper. For a split second, there is a hiss of escaping gas, and then the entire tower unzips. The internal pressure rips the steel skin apart, and a massive pillar of fire erupts into the night sky. This is where the next plot twist hits. The Russians have been trained for this exact scenario. They have massive fire suppression systems, including giant cannons that can spray thousands of gallons of foam and water per minute. These systems are completely automated. As the fire sensors trip, the massive pumps begin to hum, drawing water from the Gulf of Finland to drown the fire before it can spread to the tank farm, the area where millions of gallons of fuel are stored. But the second drone is not heading for the fire at all. It has been loitering silently in the dark. 300 feet above the water. It follows the loud sound and intense heat of the pump motors, and dives straight into the central pump house. This is the absolute heart of the fire suppression system. The explosion is relatively small, but the damage is terminal. The massive pumps, now spinning with no water to cool them, begin to seize and melt. The fire crews on the ground pull their levers, but the hoses remain completely limp. The terminal's immune system has been killed. The logic is simple. You do not need to burn the whole forest, you just need to kill the water that puts out the fire. The fire from the first tower is now spreading rapidly. The wind from the Baltic Sea pushes the intense heat toward the main storage tanks. Each tank contains enough energy to level a small town. The Russian crews try to use portable extinguishers, but it is like trying to put out a volcano with a squirt gun. Suddenly, a third drone appears from the darkness. This is the heavy drone, carrying a much larger warhead specifically designed to penetrate the thick walls of the storage tanks. It flies straight into the top floating roof. The roof of an oil tank is designed to move up and down with the fuel level to prevent dangerous gas buildup. When the drone hits, it punches a hole straight through the roof and ignites the vapor trapped underneath. This creates a boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. The entire tank, weighing thousands of tons, is lifted completely off its foundation. The sky over St. Petersburg, usually dark at 4:00 a.m., turns a bright, sickly orange. The smoke plume stretches 3 miles wide, a black scar across the white snow of the Russian winter. But the final twist is the most devastating for the Kremlin. As the terminal burns, the Russian air defense systems are still firing wildly into the empty sky. They are chasing ghosts and decoys, while the actual target is already destroyed. The fire at the Ust-Luga terminal has become a vacuum, sucking the strength out of the Russian front lines 800 miles away. As the gas columns melt into puddles of slag, the Russian high command is forced into a fatal choice. They cannot leave the crown jewel undefended, but they do not have new weapons to send. They have to steal them from the soldiers in the trenches. Across the occupied territories of Ukraine, the urgent order comes down. Heavy-duty S-300 missile batteries, the giant 4-tubed launchers that provide the main umbrella flatbed trailers, they are leaving the front lines. Ukraine did not launch this drone strike to win a simple battle in St. Petersburg. They launched it to strip the armor off the Russian army in the south. As these batteries move north, the logic becomes terrifyingly simple. Every single S-300 that arrives in St. Petersburg is one less shield protecting Russian troops from Ukrainian HIMARS and fighter jets. By hitting the refinery, Ukraine has forced the Russian lion to move its paws to cover its throat, leaving its belly wide open. But the chaos is not over yet. As the S-300 units arrive near the burning terminal, they face a nightmare of their own making. The air is thick with the smoke of 1 million gallons of burning fuel. This smoke is filled with carbon and metallic particles from the destroyed machinery. When the Buk-M3 defense systems nearby try to turn on their radars, the beams hit the dense smoke and bounce right back. The screens turn into a solid wall of white noise. In a frantic attempt to find more drones, a Buk-M3 battery fires a missile at a ghost on its screen. But the missile's seeker head gets completely confused by the massive heat signature of the burning oil tanks. It ignores the sky and dives straight into the fire, exploding right in the middle of a Russian repair crew's vehicles. The explosion flings shrapnel into a second, untouched gas line, and a new pillar of fire erupts. The defense system is now actively helping the drones finish the job. The Russian safe zone is gone. To protect the money in the north, Putin is having to gamble the lives of his soldiers in the south. The crown jewel is no longer a symbol of power. It is a weight around the neck of the entire Russian military. Before you go, there is one thing about the S-400 triumph that almost no one talks about. It is called the minimum engagement zone, or more simply, the dead zone. The world spends all its time worrying about the S-400's 240-mile reach. But because this system was built to kill high-speed NATO bombers and supersonic missiles, it has a massive physical weakness. The missiles are so big and move so fast that they need time to arm themselves and find their balance in the air. If a target, like a small plywood drone, gets within 2 or 3 miles of the launcher, the S-400 is physically incapable of hitting it. The missile would fly right over the target before it could even turn its steering fins. The world's most advanced long-range weapon has a massive blind spot right in front of its own face. Ukraine did not just find a gap in the Russian radar. They found a way to get inside the giant's reach, where his sword is simply too long to swing. Think about that. The more expensive and advanced the Russian defense becomes, the easier it is for a lawnmower engine and some plywood to hide in its shadow. If the invincible S-400 cannot even protect the ground it stands on, what else in the Kremlin's arsenal is just an expensive lie? If you got value from this video, smash that like button, it really helps the channel. And subscribe to Navy Exclusive for more deep dives like this. Hit the bell so you never miss an analysis when it drops. Thanks for watching. If you found this video valuable, please like and subscribe to Navy Exclusive.